Welcome everybody to tonight's Los Altos City Council Candidates Forum. I'm Mike Kasperzak and I am going to be moderating tonight's event. I will endeavor to do as good a job or better than Chris Wallace did last night. So I think we have a much more amenable crowd before us, and I think this will be a very informative forum. I want to talk a little bit about some of the details of the evening and introduce some of the players that are here. I will start off by introducing our timekeeper, who you really won't see, but you will see her iPad, and that's Allison Johnson. We also have 6 people that will be doing interviews. There's Allison. I will also say for the audience and for the benefit of all the candidates, is we will be strictly adhering to time limits. I will mention this again, but when the countdown timer gets to 0, our technician will mute the speaker's mic. So there will be no going over your time limits. We have 6 interviewers from the Los Altos Town Crier. We have Bruce Barton, the editor-in-chief, and Eric He, a staff writer. You guys can wave as we call you out. From Los Altos High School Talon, we have Stella Wang, the editor-in-chief, and Gil Rubenstein, the staff writer. You guys identify yourselves. And from the Mountain View High School Oracle, we have Sydney Rochnick, the web news editor, and Sophia Smith, the people editor. The sponsors for tonight's forum include the American Association of University Women, Mountain View, Los Altos, the Center for Age-Friendly Excellence, Greentown, Los Altos Community Coalition, Los Altos Community Foundation, Los Altos Forward, the Los Altos Town Crier, and the Los Altos Women's Caucus. Now, we have a lot of questions. I think we probably have more questions than any other forum I've ever been involved in as a candidate or moderator, and certainly more than most other organizations do, because we're going to be using a number of formats. But the way we selected the questions were from the various sponsoring organizations submitted questions, and then we had a request for question proposals posted in the Town Crier, which we received and have been curated, and that's how the questions came to be. As for housekeeping, this is a large group, and everybody that's in the audience, you are in webinar format. You are muted, we can't hear you, and we can't see you, but you can see all of the panelists. This meeting is being recorded and is being streamed on YouTube. And I think if you go up onto your in your monitor, go to the YouTube and hit the down arrow, you may see the YouTube feed line. As the moderator, I'm going to have my audio and video on all the time. The candidates, however, will be muted unless it is their turn to speak. As I said, when their time is up, they will be muted again. There are no penalties for their mouths continuing to move after they've been muted, but you obviously won't be able to understand what they're saying unless you read lips. The timekeeper will show candidates the time remaining for their responses, and as I said, time limits will be strictly enforced. Those of you in the audience, we may have time at the end for some questions at the end submitted by the audience. If you would like to submit questions, please email them to, all one word, losaltoscandidatesforum@gmail.com. And as I said, if we have time, we'll try and get to as many of those as we can. And now, I would like to go and have each of the candidates introduce themselves, and we will be drawing candidates' speaking orders randomly at every question. Candidates do not know what order they are in, so it will be a surprise for everybody every time it's their turn to speak. And we're now going to give candidates 1 minute to introduce themselves, and we will start with Sally.
Good evening. I'm Sally Meadows, and I'm running for City Council because we need experienced, value-driven leaders with a vision for Los Altos today and who also accept responsibility and stewardship for tomorrow. More specifically, I'm running because I care deeply about our community. I am well prepared. Serving on council would simply be an extension of my community service. We need effective, objective, and fiscally responsible leadership. And through my work in the community since I retired 10 years ago, I've been encouraged to run by many people. And this year I've made that commitment. So I say it's about all of us because it's not about me or my friends or even those who vote for me. It's also about those who don't agree with me and who don't vote for me. It's about understanding that it is the responsibility of council to make resident-focused decisions, and those decisions must be fair, objective, and forward-looking. That is what I commit to bring to council.
Thank you, Sally. And our next candidate will be Lynette.
Thank you, Mike. I am Lynette Lee, and your City Council member and mayor in 2019. When you elected me 4 years ago, I said we needed to get things done. And as promised, together we got things done. Recognizing that we should do more for affordable housing, I pressed for enforcing rules that keep below market rate units as below market rate units, protecting our most vulnerable, lower income population as intended. Some of our parklands were at risk because they were not properly designated in the general plan. When I was mayor, I championed the effort to safeguard our parks by rezoning them properly. Delivering on a long-standing city promise, we also purchased 999 Fremont Avenue in Loyola Corners, preventing overbuilding of that small central neighborhood business site. I am looking forward to sharing my ideas with you this evening.
Thank you, Lynette. And our next candidate will be Terry Couture.
Hi, I'm Terry Corter. The town of Los Altos is home for many people of all different backgrounds. My goal as a member of the Los Altos City Council is to strengthen the aesthetics and the economics of our town. The role of a leader involves the ability to research and assess information with efficient speed, respectful thought, and to decide on the priorities. Our community has many great citizens. There is a need for leaders that have critical thinking, to be technically savvy, and to decide what is practical and possible. For over 50 years, I've worked in the community and gained business backgrounds, including management, teaching, volunteering, Santa Clara County Planning Commission, value hearings officer, and residential real estate brokerage. Crisis management, competent communication, and a dedicated, disciplined work ethic have helped me succeed. I look forward to it.
Thank you, Terry. And our next candidate will be Jonathan Weinberg.
Thank you, Mike. Good evening, and let me just say that it is an honor to appear on this virtual stage before the audience, alongside so many impressive candidates who love Los Altos as much as I do. My wife, Edith, and I have lived in Los Altos since 2009. We're raising our 2 children, a 12-year-old son and a 10-year-old daughter, 1 dog and 4 chickens in the Grant Park neighborhood of the city. I decided to run for a seat on the council because I want our city to have more good leadership and less politics. I want to be a voice for the residents and taxpayers of our city and collaborate with my colleagues so that we can address the challenges of today and position our city for an even better future. My record demonstrates that I have the skills and experience necessary to contribute to the success of our city and to make it a great place to live, to raise a family, and to conduct business. When elected, my priorities are fiscal responsibility, getting our litigation under control, social justice, effective leadership in civil discourse, and to protect and preserve our environment.
Thank you, Jonathan. And so far, you guys are all doing great on time. Our next candidate will be Scott Spielman.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for moderating. I remember you from our days at Kiwanis years ago. I'm Scott Spielman, and I'd like to share a few things about me. I would bring experience as a leader, manager, team builder, and problem solver. As an engineer, I was called to solve problems that were non-textbook oriented problems working in an airport and a rapid transit system in Boston. As a marketing director, I was responsible for setting direction, organizing, motivating people, and actually motivating customers as well. As Parks and Rec Commissioner, currently where I'm vice chair, I achieved results. I worked with 2 other people on the commission to establish a dog park, and the commission brought that through to fruition. As a volunteer, I have served as a youth coach, a service club president, board member, and
Thank you, Scott. And next to last will be Kuljit Kulkat.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much for joining this call. I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. I moved here in '89 from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I grew up outside Washington, D.C. and worked for NASA as an engineer before I came here. My wife and I have raised 2 kids in this town, and they're in their 20s. I spent about 30 years in tech and product management, general management roles, and now I work as a realtor with my wife. My leadership style that I developed over those years is to build strong teams and empower them to do their best by providing them clear line of sight between their roles and the goals. I think our council needs such leadership, and I'm looking forward to providing that. Another life experience of mine that's relevant is that I ran a small business in town called the Cranberry Scoop for about 7 years. That's when our love for Los Altos began, and that's when I truly understood what makes this place so special. For the last 5 years, I've been on the Financial Commission, and I've gotten a good insight into what's important for our city, what makes it run, and what.
Thank you, Kuljit. And last is Alex Robachevsky. Alex?
Hello, my name is Alex Robachevsky. I live in Los Altos and I've been here since 2000. I'm a practicing real estate broker and a general contractor with my headquarters here. I've been building houses since I was 17. I went to Mountain View High, attended Foothill College, and graduated from Chico State with a degree in construction management. Since graduating, I've been involved in development projects all over the Bay Area, and I've been on the opposite side of City Council on administrative hearings and planning hearings, and opposite of planning commissions to push through some development services that residents requested. For the past 50 years, property values on the peninsula have doubled every 10 years, and Silicon Valley grew and formed what we love here today. Our neighbors currently have been outpacing us because their cities provide more services, and I would like to, if elected, to provide more resident-friendly services and more parks, and at the same time be more business-friendly to provide more revenue for the city to provide these civic services. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. All right, and now we will get to the heart of the matter. We're going to start off with our first round of questions. We have 6 questions that will be asked by the different interviewers, but all candidates will answer each question. You will have 1 minute to answer the question, and the esteemed Bruce Barton will ask the first question, and Scott, you will be the first candidate to respond.
What are the strengths and qualities that you would bring to the council?
well, I can reiterate some of those things. I bring experience as an engineer, business person, marketing director, and volunteer. In those capacities, I was leader and servant. I bring teamwork. I built teams throughout my career, and I will get results. I care about getting things done. Our city council has been very effective in a number of ways. We have very accomplished people there, but the areas where I could help improve would include team building, collegiality, cooperation. I think we need to improve on our financial reporting. Our city is going to face some financial challenges with a $14 million loan, and I care about the bottom line. And I really do care about getting things done. I think one of our downfalls in the past, a lot of analysis, but not a lot of results. So these are things I would contribute. Thank you for your question.
Thank you, Scott. Terry, you're next.
Thank you. Ever since I was a young child, I had jobs that I had to be responsible for final goal of everything. When I was a grocery store worker, I moved up into financing and I made stores that were red, black. I love finances. I like making things happen. In my real estate business, I've been very successful. I have lots of different clients that I've worked with. Everybody communicates well. I listen to every single question. I listen to every single concern, and we figure out a way to get the job done. In my county appointments, there's a lot of work that needs to be done before you get to the hearings, and I'm prepared to spend the time talking to all the working parts, the commission, the staff, etc., going out to the specialists if I need to get it done. I go to the ends of the earth for my clients, and I will do that here too.
Great. Thank you, Terry. Alex, you're next.
So as a real estate broker and general contractor, I have worked with homeowners to provide better use of their property and better enjoyment of their property. I understand what it takes to make residents happier with what they have and what they can do with those particular things. And I also see what residents are looking for when they're purchasing their homes and what's driving property value in that sense. I'm also very fiscally minded as a business owner. So the bottom line is very important. I treat budgets as I would in a family, where if you have money for something, you spend it. If something is an emergency, you would have to borrow. And if not, then you save for a rainy day. So fiscal responsibility, along with understanding what residents are looking for and how cities work, is what I bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you. And Lynette, you're next. You're muted.
Okay. Continuity of leadership on council is important. I have a deep understanding of the city and have built relationships with the staff and the community. I understand how to be effective. I have institutional knowledge and believe the experience I have is valuable. I believe that Los Altos is a great place to live, work, and raise a family. I have dedicated my time both on council and in my prior work to ensure that residents' perspectives and voices are heard. As you know, I have collaborated with Regional Representative Joe Simidian to bring COVID-19 testing to Los Altos. I worked with John McAllister, a VTA board member, to bring busing to the students in South Los Altos to get to schools in Sunnyvale. And I have also...
Thank you, Lynette. And Kuljit, you're up. Don't forget to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I think the qualities that I could bring to this role are leadership, teamwork. I'm a very empathetic person. I think I could understand different points of views. And the biggest focus that I have that I think I can bring to this is to really focus on the long-term vision and the long-term prize for all of us. The strengths that I think I could bring to this is I'm fairly analytical. Obviously, I understand the finances of the city fairly well, having been in those for a long time in the Financial Commission. And as a prior small business owner, I really understand what they're going through and what I think could help them. So if it's a challenge for us to actually revive our downtown, then I think I could probably bring their point of view and sentiment as well to this role.
Thank you, Kuljit. Sally.
Okay, I bring proven leadership skills, integrity, and directly relevant experience, including I've served a decade in our community, including on local government, nonprofits, and other community volunteer service. I have strong experience with land use and housing through serving on two commissions, Planning Commission and Design Review Commission, giving me over 8 years of land use and housing experience. Through my career as a biotech and pharmaceutical marketing executive, I have a strong strategic planning background, and I know how to plan today to deliver results tomorrow. I offer objective, data-driven decision-making and common sense, respectful leadership. That's what I will bring to council.
Great. Thank you, Sally. And Jonathan, I bet you know who's next.
Thanks again, Mike. So I've been practicing as an attorney for almost 20 years now. My areas of specialty are real estate law and trust and probate law. Most of what I do is litigation. So I spend an awful lot of time reading documents, processing information, working with clients, working with opposing counsel, and working with experts. I've also served as a Parks and Recreation Commissioner for the last 6 years. And in fact, I think I'm the longest current serving Parks and Rec Commissioner. I've been both the chair and the vice chair. So I've developed a really good insight into how our city government works, how the relationship between council and the commissions, and most importantly, what we can do in order to make sure that the residents' voices are being heard and the opportunities that council has to be honest and transparent with the residents. I have a collaborative style. As a litigator, I see what happens when you work to win every single little battle, and the best results always come when people are willing to sit down and compromise and find the best solution.
Thank you. All right, we will move on to our second question. And Stella, I think you have this question.
All right. So many Los Altos residents are concerned about the increase in home and vehicle burglaries. To address these concerns, do you think we should increase police funding or allocate funds towards social welfare programs?
And Jonathan, you got the bell, you're number one.
So in general, I don't think that having more police presence necessarily means that there's going to be less crime. Nor have I heard our police departments say that they don't believe that they have the resources they need to keep us safe. I think that social resources, finding ways to address homelessness, poverty, drug addiction, other motivations that could lead people into feeling like they have to resort to crime are the way to go. I do believe that we should consult with the police department. I think that the police department has an obligation to the community to give us their insight into what we can do as residents, and more particularly what the council can do as an organization to try to make sure that we are protected in our homes and our streets.
Thank you, Jonathan. And Terry, you are our next candidate.
Currently, the Police Commission is working on identifying the concerns. The task force is going to find the concerns that the residents have regarding any lack of police work that isn't being done properly. It looks like the police are doing a very good job of finding the people who aren't following the rules. I think there's a lot of things that have happened over the last 4 years with technology that moves a lot of people through Los Altos that never knew about Los Altos before. And that is a concern for all of us. The speeding, the burglaries, the bicycle thefts, etc. And the Citizens Task Force is doing a very good job of identifying with cameras, etc. So anything the police can do to help us all protect ourselves. And
thank you, Terry. Sally, you're next.
All right, thank you. So the data I've seen, or at least the reports that I've seen, and I don't claim to have seen them all, shows that most of the home burglary and auto break-ins are not really committed by residents. So they're coming from out-of-town folks, again, not claiming to have seen all the data associated with this. So essentially, I'm not sure that we can provide social services to address burglaries that are stemming from outside of our community. So then how might we think about being able to prevent those? So certainly, I think we as residents can look at our own perimeters of our houses, think about advancing our own security systems. I know that when a burglary does happen or auto break-in, we all look to our neighbors and say, did your cameras catch that? So maybe we think, maybe we need to adopt some increased technologies to protect ourselves, but the police won't be able to be on every street all.
Thank you, Sally. Lynette, you're up.
Okay, Mike, thank you again. Could you please repeat the question if you don't mind? I just want to make sure I'm answering the question. Do you mind?
I can repeat it.
Oh, sorry, Stella.
Oh,
You
all
went
good.
blank.
So many Los Altos residents are concerned about the increase in home and vehicle burglaries. To address these concerns, do you think we should increase police funding or allocate funds towards social welfare programs?
I believe the budget we have allocated is sufficient. What we can do is continue to work with the community. The police department continues to do wonderful outreach with the community. What they have done is have the code enforcement officer available. People can utilize this resource that we have. The code enforcement officer comes on site, provides assistance to see what needs to be reinforced. We also have a wonderful technology share program with the police department in which people can provide the camera information to the police, and that has been very helpful in seeking individuals who have been caught. The other thing is we have resources such as our BATS, our Block Action Team, as well as our Neighborhood Watch program. We will continue to grow those programs, and they are neighbors helping neighbors.
Thank you, Lynette. Alex, you're up.
So I do not believe that the local burglaries are linked to Los Altos residents. And so civic programs in our neighborhoods, I don't believe would solve those problems. I do believe that civic services would be helpful for Los Altos residents, but I would not cut budgets from the police at the moment. So I would speak with the police, find out what technological services we can provide to the residents, or tell the residents they should do. And at the same time, I would also see if I could work with City Council and Public Works to provide more street lights and more lighting for the residents, so that there's no dark alleys where you can cut off a catalytic converter, like what happened on my Prius, in and out in 10 minutes. And there's absolutely nothing that we could have done unless there's a camera pointing right at it. So cameras possibly on intersections and streetlights, and work with the police.
Thank you, Alex. And Kuljit. You're muted.
Yes, all our safety is paramount. You know, it's the perception of our quality of life changes significantly if we feel threatened in our environment. So I would say that if there is an issue about increased burglary or increased risk to citizens, I think we need to sort of look at the data very, very carefully to be able to substantiate that this is just not a perception, or is it actually a fact? And if it is a fact, then I think it is an essential service that the city must invest in. You know, there's no reason to go around it that that if we are having increased burglaries, etc., we need to address it. I do feel, though, that the question is not mutually exclusive the way it's asked. You know, burglaries or social services are two different things, and we need to sort of address them differently. We do have the money and the resources in this town to do this.
All right. And thank you. We had a timer malfunction there, so thank you for. I think you got in under a minute, Kuljit. Thank you.
I'm not able to see the timer. Mike, I'm not able to see your timer.
Oh, you can't. It says timekeeper. Are you on gallery view?
Yeah. I have started, I knew I've been going over, so I've started using my phone to keep track of my own time. Okay, now I see it on top. Thank you. Okay.
And all of you, if you're not on gallery view, you should be, so you can see everybody. All the audience can see all of you all the time.
Okay. Yeah, so, but I was in a different gallery portion. So
there you go.
Okay, thank you.
And Scott, you are the final candidate on this question.
I have heard about this from a number of residents. Even yesterday, I heard of someone whose car was broken into twice. It happened to one of my neighbors and several other people that I know. So I perceive this as a real situation. I don't believe that funding social services is going to reduce this particular crime, but I do believe in supporting our local police. I think they're effective. I think they're lean. and I think we need to support their efforts. I think beyond that, I do agree with candidate Lee Eng that we need to support our crime watch neighborhoods and our BATS. I believe as well that spot checks are reasonable. I've been spot checked before, and it gives me a comfort when police are out looking for suspicious vehicles. I think that's in itself a deterrent of crime, as long as there's no discrimination, as long as people are treated fairly and in a caring way.
Great. Thank you, Scott. Before we go on to question number 3, which will be asked by Sydney, just as a quick thing, you know, you think you cover all eventualities, and of course we don't. So listen to the questions very carefully. If you have to ask for the question to be repeated, the clock will continue to run, so that will count against your time. So from here on out. So you know, every time we learn something new, someone might get a little freebie, but we're learning as we go. So Sydney, you've got question number 3.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What, in your opinion, is the most important initiative you would bring to the position?
And Scott, you get the first whack at this one.
I'm sorry, I need to hear the question repeated because I didn't understand it.
Of course. What, in your opinion, is the most important initiative you would bring to the position?
Okay, could you please restart my clock?
No, Scott, we just said restart if you have to repeat the question.
Well, I couldn't understand it. So one of the things that I will focus on will be more effective meetings, and that would be organization, better agenda, better time management, better working as a team on city council so that residents have a desire to hear our city council meetings and want to be more involved with our city. So I will seek much more effective agenda management and meeting management if I am elected to city council.
Thank you, Scott. Kulji, you're up.
Thank you. Yes, I would agree with Scott. You know, we both are of the same hair club society, so I have to agree with him. I think the largest thing we need to do as a city is to really address the role of our council. Our council, our staff, and our commissions need to work together as a team. This is our responsibility to provide the leadership and direction, and we're having a hard time with that right now. So we really need to have a conversation about roles and goals, and that would be, I think, have an impact on all kinds of projects and initiatives going smoothly in the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Lynette, you're up. You're muted.
In light of what's happening to our city budget based on COVID and all the services we need to continue to provide, I think it's important that we need to have a good check on our expenses. We need to have a good controls. So I would ensure that we understand the trade-offs going forward. I would ensure that we have regular reviews of our budgets. We need to do more with less going forward, because we would have to understand what we need to move forward with. We have to ensure that we can continue to provide the essential services for our residents while meeting the needs of needed infrastructure improvements. So once again, I think it's important for us to have a good focus.
Your time is up.
Oh.
And Sally, don't forget to unmute.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to talk about the fiscal responsibility theme. I think a couple of my fellow candidates have mentioned that as well, but I'm going to specifically focus about how it ties in with affordable housing and our lawsuits. I think that regarding some of the proposals that come forward that offer affordable housing proposals, we take a slow it down and obstruct the reviews of some of these sometimes. And so we end up very slowly trying to move things forward. And sometimes we don't move things forward. Sometimes we turn down applications, and whether that's a request for a subdivision or whether that's affordable housing applications. And sometimes these have led to lawsuits. So I think we need to really get a handle on how we're spending our money, and are we spending it because we're making decisions that are not consistent with our zoning and with state laws. And if we get more consistent with our zoning, we won't have these lawsuits.
Thank you, Sally. And Alex, don't forget to unmute.
So I would be addressing the long-term effects that the pandemic will have on Los Altos. I would work with businesses to entice them to stay open while providing safe access to customers, and removing subjectivity from the planning department so that residents could be able to renovate and enjoy their own properties. And by doing these things, it'd bring more money into the city and allow us to be able to provide the services that we need. And so the other long-term effects of the pandemic would also be the general enjoyment and use and safe use of properties, parks, and other services. So by creating a business-friendly and resident-friendly solution, we'd be able to bring in more money to provide more civic services as we come out of the pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And Terry, you're up. Don't forget to unmute.
Thank you. I believe the financial carefulness is very important, but I have something that I've noticed from all of this, that there's probably 6 or 7 groups of people in Los Altos that all have lots of contact information of residents. I'd like to get everybody together so that the city council and the staff can be able to contact every single member of the community, so everyone is aware of what's happening in the city before it becomes a crisis. I would like everybody to understand what things are being considered, what things are being discussed, etc., so that we all can make an educated decision together and get advice from the residents, because the residents are our bosses. Thank you.
And Jonathan, you've got cleanup.
All right. One of the issues that really concerns me the most right now is the amount of litigation that the city is currently embroiled in. The current council, I think, has let our litigation costs tripled from what it used to be. We find ourselves involved in some lawsuits that, quite frankly, we're in the wrong. And I don't know why the council has made the decision to move forward with some of them. We could look at the Arroyo Road lot split. We can look at the 40 Main Street litigation. These were absolute disasters, and in one case, the judge found that the city was acting in bad faith. The city simply must comply with the law. And that means that sometimes our leaders, the city council, is going to have to make a decision that isn't popular. But it is the council's responsibility as a fiduciary to protect the taxpayers' money and to communicate openly and transparently as to what are the constraints the council is acting under. We also have to put these potential liabilities on the books. When we don't do that, we are hiding the true litigation costs from the residents, and that's not right.
Thank you, Jonathan. And just before we go, just a quick little update. We have about 125 viewers all told between the Zoom and YouTube at this moment. So a pretty good audience. Our next question is going to be asked by Eric He, and I want to remind our interviewers to speak loudly and clearly so that the candidates can hear the question. Eric.
All right. What would your priorities for implementing the downtown vision plan that was approved by the City Council in September 2018?
And Kuljit, you'll be first.
Yes, hi. So the downtown vision plan, I think, is a great document that's been approved unanimously by the council, but the hard part just begins in trying to actually build consensus on next steps. The largest part of that I think needs to be discussed is really beyond the vision, is really how are we going to fund any kind of a growth? You know, we are a town that lives pretty much on a fixed budget. We've used up a lot of our money on infrastructure in the community center. So for the foreseeable future, we really don't have a lot of spare money to actually do any kind of development. So the question is that without actually having a long-term plan in terms of fiscally how to do anything, how would we actually make progress? And I think those things are going to require some private partnerships, et cetera. But those are the kind of conversations we need to start.
Thank you. Scott, you'll be next. Thank you.
Well, I think that the downtown vision plan was impressive. It was $330,000 and it was extremely well done. I believe we won an award for the quality of that plan. One of the council members referred to it as aspirational. And I think there are many things in it that we would love to see, but I do not believe we have the funding for it. And I agree with Kaljit about that. So we need to review the priorities in that plan and reestablish what are the most important things we could do. The limitations that we have will be cost and parking. We need to consider those once again. I think affordable housing is touched on in that vision plan. I believe we need to address that and consider that and make that a priority for our city and consider what parts that plan could play in providing that for our residents, people that work here, and people that are part of our staff. So re-envision the plan and reconsider what's there.
Thank you, Scott. Jonathan, you're up.
So I see the downtown vision plan as aspirational, and I'll be perfectly honest up front. I absolutely love it. I think that it is a fantastic vision, and I'm really impressed with the process that the city went through in order to get as many points of view as possible. The points of view of residents were gathered, property owners, employers. That's what it takes to put together a project, to put together a plan that's going to serve the residents and the community as best as possible. We are right now in the midst of the pandemic, and that has presented an economic crisis. I don't think that it's appropriate to move forward with the downtown vision until we have more economic stability. And the reality is that means once the pandemic gets under control, after we're fortunate enough to have discovered and distributed a virus. But once the economy has settled, I think that it is appropriate to bring the property owners, bring the employers, bring the residents together. Let's prioritize which parts of the downtown vision are most important, and let's go ahead and start putting those into effect.
Great, thank you, Jonathan. And Terry.
The downtown vision plan, of course, is beautiful and very aspirational and wonderful. But with the pandemic, as we've got a lot of vacant businesses. We've got a lot of vacant, actually, commercial properties. We are going to be getting a loan for the community center. We're going to need to push through all of that and make sure that we don't overextend this town before we go back through and try to understand what we can do in the vision plan and what we need to maybe time out, because no one knew this pandemic was coming. I think the business owners want to help. They're sometimes strapped, and I think the landowners could help with the business owners and leases, et cetera. And together, I think we can all find a way to work through it, but it's not going to be today or tomorrow.
Thank you, Terry. And Sally, you're up. And yep.
Yep, I'm unmuted, I think. So as folks have said, the downtown vision is a solid plan, is aspirational. I view it as a menu of choices. And so we can sort of mix and match. Where do we go first is the question that's on the table right now. Again, given the context of needing to support our local businesses to survive currently and come out of the pandemic with the best economic stability we can give them, let's look at the options in that plan that might help support that. So one experience I have had as planning commissioner is know that we opened up zoning on ground floor on First Street to allow personal exercise services. So let's think about the ground floor on Main and State Streets. What creative businesses can we get in there? And if we can get it on an upward cycle where more businesses are excited to come in, we can develop further menu item after menu.
Thank you, Sally. Lynette.
Yes, as stated, the downtown vision is a wonderful tool that the council has adopted. It has an array of selections that we should have to choose from. What we would do is we would need to have the conversation again, but there are things that we can do from the downtown vision plan that are low-hanging fruit and we can move forward on, such as we can change the loading zones to add additional parking. We've also implemented some of the ideas that brought forward. So moving forward on the parklets as well has demonstrated how we can have utilized open space in our downtown. So these are wonderful ideas. We need to have the conversation. We also have to have the conversation on how to fund these items. There was discussion on whether we could do parking meters.
Thank you, Lynette. And Alex, you'll finish up this question.
So the timer disappeared on me. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. The pandemic is the exact time to work with developers to get this process moving forward. We have to start now, but by the time the pandemic is done, we'll be finished with one project and on our way to another one. And we have the tools to do this and to poise Los Altos for a post-COVID world. We need to incentivize developers with the added density and fee discounts to be able to streamline the review process and to make sure that the developers support local businesses by providing them lease options when things settle out. Similar to the corner of Castro and El Camino in Mountain View, where the local businesses were able to set up shop once the development was done. And so these businesses and the low-hanging fruit of the vision plan would help provide funding for the city to be able to move forward on projects that are less profitable.
Thank you, Alex. And the next question number 5 in this series, will be asked by Gil.
Thanks, Mike. So during wildfire season, what policies would you implement to keep residents safe and make sure that reasonable quality of life is maintained?
And the first answer will come from Scott.
Well, wildfires fortunately have not affected our community, but they affect other communities around us. And I think that one of the things we ought to consider is how can we help other communities in need? As far as Los Altos goes, I think the preservation of our energy is very important. And especially since we had some losses of electricity, we need to take into consideration how can we as a city and we as residents preserve what we have so that we can effectively have the air conditioning for those especially in need. And in the wintertime, if it happens, those that have heat, those that need heat. So I believe we need to figure out policies that will help us preserve energy and protect residents, even if it is to provide loans of generators or auxiliary equipment.
Thank you, Scott. And Lynette, you'll be second. You're muted, Lynette.
Sorry. It automatically mutes you. So regarding the wildfires, I have heard from many community members in the Highlands who were very nervous about possibly having some fires reach their homes and may need to evacuate. We also had people bordering Los Altos Hills. So I think it's important to make sure that we have an exit plan, work with our neighboring communities, such as Los Altos Hills. We need to also continue to work with our BATs to emphasize that we have a strong program so that we can properly engage the community in exit plans for our community. We have Cupertino, who's also has strong programs to make sure that we have public safety and where people should go if there's an emergency in place. And where are...
All right, thank you, Lynette. And Sally.
Okay, so yes, wildfire season, horrible. It does affect Los Altos. Our air quality is terrible for weeks. Usually in the summer, we have our windows open. We didn't have it open for a long time. So in terms of safety and quality of life, think about incenting solar panels, including with on-site battery storage. We installed panels recently, but the on-site storage was too expensive. Therefore, we're still prone to power shutoffs, despite producing our own power. We also need to, again, think about, are there some systems to help with air quality within the home, but that we can each personally take on. We need to have our go kits ready. I think if, we should all have learned that lesson, seeing how close it was, and Los Altos Hills was even on alert. We need to approve as soon as possible our Emergency Operations Center. I think that's coming to council soon because Planning Commission just moved it on. Those folks will help us with good ideas on how to keep ourselves safe.
Thank you, Sally. And Alex.
So I would work with the city council to provide air quality incentives for HVAC upgrades for better filtration in homes. And so along with that, possibly if reducing fees for planning approval for battery backups. I would also work with our neighboring cities to push California to make fire roads in our unmanaged forests and certain wildfire areas that are at higher risk. At the same time, I would also work to push for better power supply and the power grid in California. I understand that as a local municipality, we don't have say over it, but I would try and urge for better production of power so that we're not subject to having generators and brownouts and lack of power. That's it.
Thank you, Alex. Jonathan, you're up. Don't forget to unmute.
So I absolutely think that the wildfires and other man-made and natural disasters are catastrophes, potential catastrophes that affect Los Altos. First and foremost, I think that the primary tool that the city has in order to provide public safety above and beyond our police department and fire department are the block action teams. The block action teams do a wonderful job of organizing small locations, their individual blocks, and making sure that residents have a plan, that they have go kits, that they know what should be in those go kits. But above and beyond the block action teams, I think that the city council has an obligation to make sure that we have the most modern technology available to ensure that we can respond to any type of a disaster. That means communication, that means equipment, and that means people that are trained to use them. Finally, I think that the city council has to educate the public. Everyone has to have a plan. Everyone has to be able to know how they're going to contact their loved ones, their families, their friends to make sure that we're safe.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kuljit.
Yes, so thanks, Gil. I think that was a perfect question for the kind of conversations I think the council needs to have and is not having. This is a perfect example of the kind of strategic direction and long-term planning that the city should be doing. Our gut reaction to a question like that is to sort of become a fire expert and suddenly give ideas on what can be done. The reality is that we spent $7 million to outsource this function to the county. And they have the experts. That's why we did do this. So why are we not engaging them? Why are we not having quarterly reviews about, okay, what is a fire plan for Los Altos? What can we do? We have just, completely just write a check and forget about it until there's a crisis. Is the kind of the governing that we're getting, and that's what gets us in trouble. So I think when I say that we need to have long-term vision and direction, this is the kind of conversations exactly that we need to be having with the experts that help us run our city. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuljit. And Terry.
Along with the fire protection plan and the block teams, back to my thought about having a complete list of all the residents. There are probably 30% of our residents are elderly, and they probably don't really have a lot of people to watch over them and take care of them. And with the block captains making sure, and neighborhood watch, making sure that everybody knows what's happening, the fire department knows who the people are that are at risk, and our neighbors know that who are at risk, we can together make sure that everybody's safe. It's one of those things that I think is very important, that all the residents feel like they are protected and safe in any of these kinds of emergencies. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Terry. And we have one more question in this round, and that will be asked by Sophia. Sophia, thanks for hanging in there.
Of course. Okay. My question is, how do you plan to best support local businesses, especially restaurants, affected by the shelter-in-place mandate?
And Lynette, you'll get the first swing at that.
Well, we are continually working with the chamber. We're working with the restaurateurs, and we are working with the retailers. We don't feel we can leave the retailers out. The whole plan on small businesses, we do demonstrated we do support the small businesses. We provided the small business grants. We also seek outside donations, and we would like to encourage further donations to continue such a grant program. But we are also working, we have provided assistance through our economic development coordinator, and we provide staff assistance through Anthony Cornaseca, who works with the restaurants and the retailers and the chamber and all other organizations like LAVA, LACF, to make sure that we can better support downtown Los Altos and the other 6 other shopping districts.
Thank you, Lynette. Jonathan, you're up.
So first and foremost, the city of Los Altos has to continue to follow the rules and regulations set by the county health officer, by the state, and by the federal government. We are not out of the woods when it comes to COVID-19, and everyone has to do their part. I fully support the joint program between the Chamber of Commerce and the City Council to try to provide opportunities to increase vibrancy downtown and in our other business districts. That includes allowing the restaurants to move out into the streets 4 days a week, and also making sure that there's parking available for our retail community. I think that the Chamber and Councilmember Bruins did an excellent job identifying options, trying to resolve some of the tensions, and being flexible enough to make sure that the plan is something that was able to accommodate changing needs. So I would continue to let I think that it's appropriate for government to help mitigate the problem. I would continue to support our restaurants and other small businesses, both financially.
Thank you, Jonathan. Scott, you're up.
I think that's a very high quality question. Recently, being downtown and enjoying some of the restaurants, I appreciated the outdoors option that we have. And I think that was a great vision. And I think we should continue it in conjunction with retailers so that the conflicts are minimized. So I believe we should continue outdoor restaurant activity, perhaps accepting heat lamps, carrying us through the seasons. They do this in many places in the world, but we have to do it in conjunction with the retailers. And so we would want to care that they have retail space, tables outside. And so we don't want to benefit one while we hurt the other. So it really would require a joint plan. But I'd encourage us to continue allowing restaurants to operate outside as long as the conflict with retailers is minimized.
Thank you, Scott. Kuljit, you're up.
Yes, thanks for the question, Stella. So this is, I think, a fairly important question for a couple of reasons. One, it's not just let's do this because we feel nice to the small businesses. We need that sales tax revenue. You know, if we want to have the essential services, we need that money. So as just for that, the city has to actually do something about making sure that our small businesses continue to survive. Secondly, as a resident, even if you don't shop downtown, you should know that the charm and the character of this town comes from those things. Unless you want to become a resident of a bedroom community where you just come and sleep, we need to keep that business, those businesses alive, because I think that's where things happen. The only way I can think of is that we have to do whatever it takes to make our shopping districts destinations for everything. You know, we can't be just saying we have a program for shoppers or food eaters. You know, whatever it takes for the city to promote that these are the places where you want to go in your spare time. The shops will survive, they'll flourish. They can do their part as long as we can get traffic to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Kuljit. And Sally, you're up.
Okay, so I think as it was mentioned before, no one knew this was coming. We did a great first temporary step to help our businesses and our restaurants with the Open Streets program. But temporary is the key word there. When we're moving beyond the spring and summer months into the fall. So we need more permanent solutions. And I don't think you can separate restaurants from retail. They go hand in hand. If one is thriving, the other will thrive. If they all begin to thrive, then more businesses will come into town. So this gets to that upward circle of improving our business climate overall. So again, back to let's think about our ground floor zoning. Let's make sure that we collaborate across, just like council actually did start, collaborate across the chamber, the businesses, property owners, LAVA in the case of downtown, and the city to provide services. So it's important that we do what we can to develop a sustainable plan.
Thank you, Sally. And we're drawing to the near end of this session. Terry, you're next up.
In looking at the businesses, both the retail and the restaurants that I've seen yesterday, they had the barrels up because we no longer have open streets for the restaurants. Everybody was parking downtown again. It looked actually more full to me than it's been looking. I think having the parking space for the elderly people has helped a lot, even though I think there's loads of parking. I think that there are still many people that are very afraid of the virus. So those of us who aren't afraid need to be able to lead an example and be downtown with our masks on and enjoy the ambiance. In many parts of the country now, there are awnings over, there are lights up, there are heaters, there are benches, there are seats, people bring their own blankets. If it's a very festive.
Thank you, Terry. And Alex, you will complete this round of questions.
So we need to incentivize more small businesses to stay open, but safely by providing more outdoor space for them and provide parking required to keep them open. So I recommend staggering open times so we can minimize the impact of parking and space constraints while also temporarily making some of the streets one way to provide traffic in one direction and parking on the other side. We need to work with the business owners in the Chamber of Commerce to make sure that we're doing everything that we can. Small businesses are the lifeblood of our community and a huge part of the services that make Los Altos what it is. The other option that we have is if there's any underutilized buildings in the city that would allow for more civic programs or small businesses, for example, like soccer in the park or children's services for some childcare that's safe but distant, meeting all COVID requirements, I would also support using those.
All right. We've been going about an hour now. So how's everybody's stamina doing? You know, thumbs up, everybody? Okay. So we're going to give you guys all a little bit of a break here, and we're going to go to the audience. And we've got a poll for the audience. We've got a poll of 6 questions. And I don't know if the candidates will be able to see those questions, but all of you in the audience, a poll's going to pop up, and we would like you to answer all 6 of those and then hit submit. And then we will do a brief look at the results there. So if we can post the poll. And so those in the audience, if you'll go through and do that poll, and we'll give you a minute or 2 here to do that. And a quick question for the candidates, just shake your head. Can you see at least the first 3 poll questions? And for those that are participating, don't forget at the end to hit the submit button at the bottom. And we're about halfway through. Oh, 3/4 of the way. We'll start waiting for the stragglers to come in here. And I'll tell the timer, let's give it 10 more seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we will close the poll and let's post the results. And, you know, the reason we're doing this is these may be some issues that the candidates are interested in knowing where people are. And let's see, how do people scroll through this to our technical people? So what we've got is, do you have school-age children? 76% of the respondents, 88% of the respondents do not have school-age children in Los Altos. And 65% do think traffic safety is a major issue. And 60% have been to a council meeting within the past year, 40 have not. And I don't think I can see the last ones because I can't see it on the text they're sending me. So, oh well, another technical glitch. So.
I can actually see them if you'd like me to read them.
Oh, that would be great.
So question number 4 was, should Los Altos rethink its approach to policing? 51% yes, 49% no. Question number 5, does Los Altos need an off-leash dog park? 60% said yes, 40% said no. Question number 6, should high-density housing be allowed along El Camino Real? 92% yes, 8% no.
All right, thank you, Alex. And you know, I'm just so confused. I'm working on my laptop and I was trying to use my finger on the screen thinking it was my iPad. I just needed to use the mouse. All right, so we will move on to our next round of questions. And these are going to be 30-second responses. So you're really gonna have to get your answer out there. Question number 7 will be asked by Bruce Barton. So Bruce.
Why is the bocce ball proposal at Grant Park such a controversy? How would you handle it?
And Sally, you get the first shot at that one.
Okay, so I'm not sure why it should be. It's really fairly simple. So if the community wants a Grant Park master plan, fine, go forward with it. Just say thank you. No, we're not ready for bocce ball. And then develop your master plan. And so the bocce ball thing, you know, the offer may go away because that's how philanthropy works. You sign for money, but that's fine. You'll have a master plan, and that makes a lot of sense for that community.
Thank you, Sally. Lynette.
I think it's important to make sure we get the public input. So we also have to make sure that we follow process. And the concern is that we're following process in these matters. So getting public input, making sure we have follow the steps in creating a Grant Park master plan, and then moving forward to ensure that we have the community moving forward together on ideas that we would like to implement.
Thank you, Lynette. Jonathan.
So I think the bocce ball issue is one that really highlights the importance of having strict procedures that are followed consistently throughout the city and making sure that the city council does a very good job of communicating with the residents and informing them what's being proposed. A lot of people that I've heard come to the Parks and Rec Commission meeting talking about bocce ball are concerned that it's going to take away green space when there are opportunities simply to put it where there is currently a shed. The commissions have to be consistent in the rules that they're applying and make sure that we're following city policies.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kulji.
Yeah, so from what I've heard about the opposition to this thing, it stems from people worrying about conflicting use, you know, so that it might take away space for other things that are happening. And I think that's a concern that the Parks Commission and the Parks Department can actually address, like Jonathan just did. But the larger issue is really about the funding and not just, this is not a park we're building once. How we're going to maintain this, who's going to pay for it, who has control over it going forward is a process.
Thank you, Kulji. Scott, you're up.
All right, we need a master plan first. That's city policy. That's what staff recommends. It's the horse before the cart. In that master plan, all options should be considered, including basketball, senior exercise equipment, and bocce ball. And residents' voices really need to be heard and listened to. Many will be impacted that live in the area. We should not have a deadline to force a decision. I think that's unrealistic and unfair to everyone trying to make a recommendation.
Great, thank you, Scott. Terry.
I keep going back to my list of all the residents so everyone knows what's happening, because I think what happened, to the best of my ability, is the residents really weren't sure what was happening and how it was happening and weren't really on board with it. And it has to be resident centric, and then it has to be to the master plan.
Thank you, Terry. And Alex. And you're muted, Ed. There you go.
So if a limited amount of people wants to use a common resource for a specific activity, a master plan is an important document that allows us to get the input of all the residents that we need to make a decision from there. And I do think that we should listen to the most impacted residents, because for them it affects the people who use the property more, because it affects them to a much greater extent.
Thank you, Alex. All right, our next question is going to be from Stella, and remind the questioners to speak up and speak clearly.
The city has spent roughly 3.11% of their annual operating budget paying legal fees on the proposed development at 40 Main Street. Should council have pursued this case to trial and partially to appeal? Why or why not?
And Kuljit, you'll be first on this.
Yeah, so this is a sad state, frankly. I think the city, got ourselves in a lot of trouble. My timer's not going, but I'm going to stop quickly. The thing that troubles me more is that the council actually was quite aware of the financial implications of this case, and they still pursued it, which really bothers me, that they were not being proper fiduciaries and understood that they were playing with city's financing and understood the implications, but decided to take it on for political reasons.
Thank you, Kuljit. And next will be Scott.
40 Main Street was a confluence of bad things that happened. I think that our staff could have been more effective. I think our legal advice could have been better. Senate Bill 35 came along, and with that confluence of activities, it's unfortunate the way it played out. It should have been negotiated early on and settled as a 3-story development. If they had caught it early, then we would have had a much better outcome. Pursuing legal work probably shouldn't have gone as far as it did.
Thank you, Scott. Sally.
This isn't a 30-second question, but that said, so SB 35 changed the landscape, and we didn't change our thinking with it. So, and I'm not sure that there's blame, but let's just focus on what happened. So we fought the process rather than following the process and trying to define, and that's why we ended up losing. That is fine, but the appeal itself was an issue, and that takes more than 30 seconds.
Thank you, Sally. Terry.
When the new law came out, I don't think the legal advisors, nor the staff, nor the council had enough time to understand what the implications were. And by that time, they had made decisions that they couldn't go back on. It's unfortunate, but the appeal probably shouldn't have gone through. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Alex?
One second. There you go. So we need incremental change and progress, and not spend all of resident money, because that's what taxpayer money is, on useless litigation. Developers are not our enemies, and we need to work with them to come up with a solution that helps all the residents and get the most that we can for the residents and provide the most services.
Thank you, Alex. Lynette.
Well, as you know, it's like you said, it's pending litigation. At this time, I am unable to comment. I would love to speak to it, but I must follow the law and therefore can't comment on this item.
All right. And Jonathan?
No, the city did not comply with the law. We did not comply with our obligations to provide a certain amount of lower income housing. We did not have objective building standards in place. There was no basis for the city to deny the developer the permits necessary to proceed with the project. I don't like the project, but the city did not act properly and should not have gotten into this litigation. To make matters worse, the city council breached its fiduciary duties by not accounting for the financial expenses and the potential liabilities on the books.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. And question number 9, Sydney, and remember to speak up and speak clearly.
Of course. What portion of council funds would you allocate towards small businesses?
And Jonathan, you're first up.
It's a difficult question. We have about $45 million in expected revenue with a budget of about $43 million in expected expenses. Because of COVID-19, I think that our revenues are going to fall almost about 10% short. Nevertheless, our businesses provide jobs, our businesses provide tax revenue, and it is important to support them. Because the shelter-in-place order was government mandated, it's appropriate for government to help mitigate the problem. So I would find an appropriate amount.
Thank you, Alex.
So I would do everything that I can to support small businesses through any non-financial means necessary by providing the street closures and giving them more access to customers so they can stay open. And then the grant program has been working very well, but until you can connect businesses with customers, businesses will not thrive. So I would work on keeping them open.
Thank you, Alex. Terry, you're up.
Until our businesses get back up and running, we're going to need to support them. Every single citizen needs to try to do their best to be downtown to support them, those that are not afraid of the virus. The city did provide a number of grants, and we need to go to our legislators and hope we can get some more PPP and help for the businesses.
Thank you, Terry. Scott.
I can't give you a percent, but I believe we should do everything we can to help our small businesses across the boards. I would suggest that street closure should continue indefinitely. Again, as long as it works with retailers, I believe that we should consider future parcel adjustments to have 2 places in one location. I believe we should plan with our small businesses to find out what their needs are, and I believe we should consider another grant of 250 or more.
Thank you. Kuljit.
Yes, so first of all, I think if you're a Los Altos Hills resident and listening, I'm really disappointed that Los Altos Hills did not participate in helping our small businesses. This is your downtown too, so I think it was kind of sad that it didn't happen. I think that it's not a question of just charity. Like I said, we need the sales tax revenue, so we need to spend money on actually protecting that revenue. And I think doing another round of supporting them to at least pay their rents, etc., would be really, really helpful.
Thank you, Kuljit. Sally?
Okay, so as everyone said, I'm not going to throw a percentage out there. I'm not even sure I'm going to throw a dollar number out there. I think what's more important is we provide substantial support, focusing on longer term stability and solutions. So not just 4 days a week open street programs, but let's put something permanent in place in certain spots. Let's get people into the businesses and the restaurants, and let's focus on that.
Thank you, Sally. And last but not least, Lynette.
We need to continue to provide the support that we have continued to give. The city will continue to partner with the agencies involved and the business sector. We will also need to work to include all business districts. We cannot only focus on one area. It would have to be all of our small businesses. We would also have to work with our county agencies to see what tax credit.
Great, thank you, Lynette. And just as a status update, we're up to about 123 people on the Zoom and 13 over on YouTube. So we've still got a pretty good crowd. And they actually trusted me with a question. So question number 10 is, and this one is dear to my heart after 16 years on the Mountain View City Council, how would you make council meetings more efficient? And Terry, you get the first crack at that.
When I worked on Santa Clara County Planning Commission, we had a very specific goal in mind. We could only go certain times because then the building use was to someone else. So we had ways to limit speaking, and the best thing is for the actual council members to be completely researched before they come to the meetings.
Thank you. Sally.
Yes, so all council members are responsible for being professional and focused, understanding key questions and the decisions they're trying to drive towards. Like a board, give strategic direction to staff. Don't wordsmith or redesign projects on the dais. Keep comments concise and on topic. Be disciplined about moving through the agenda and make timely decisions. The less projects come back, the more time you have for other options.
Thank you, Sally. Kuljeet.
Yes, I think I mentioned this before. I think we almost need a civic lesson in roles. What is a council's job? Just like Sally said, it's not to actually start working as a planning department. We have one, so I think the thing to do to actually make them more efficient, though, is to perhaps have smaller study sessions or more frequent study sessions so the council members are up on the issues before the public meetings happen where they have to vote, because we.
Thank you, Kuljeet. Jonathan.
So first and foremost, I think that council members should try to make their points once and not repeat them ad nauseum. It simply isn't necessary. Second of all, I'm really disappointed with some of the level of invective that the current council seems to have demonstrated. I think that it's important for members of council to be polite, and to be honest, and to be respectful, and to be active listeners. Finally, I think the council has to do a better job respecting the work that the commissions are doing and that the city staff are doing so they can work collaboratively.
Thank you, Jonathan. Scott.
I believe that our agenda should be managed more appropriately with priorities committed to and not too many items on any agenda. I believe that our meetings should be managed more effectively, and mayor needs to take an active role in controlling speakers' time and reminding them to move on and push towards motions. I believe that that we need to review meeting management from time to time as a council to make sure we're effective. And I think we need to be aware of analysis paralysis to get results.
Thank you, Scott. Alex.
So I would try and get as much public input as possible before the meeting, email residents prior to the meeting, and limit public comment during the meeting to not derail the conversation. And I would also limit kicking the can down the road to make sure that we don't just prolong things for the sake of prolonging them. City council are elected officials, and they need to serve the residents and get things done, and strive to get them done in a timely manner to provide a positive incremental change.
Thank you, Alex. And Lynette.
It is a challenge for many cities to keep their meetings as brief as possible. More complete staff reports would be helpful, and establishing meetings and agendas that prioritize community input are steps that we can take. Compared to our other neighboring cities, our average is lower than those other cities. Our meetings, we need to give more time for public input, as both sides of issues need to have the chance to be heard.
All right. Thank you very much, Lynette. And now we're going to go to question number 11. Eric, I think you've got that one.
Yes. If elected, what would you do to improve the city of Los Altos' financial footing?
And Kuljeet, you'll take that one first.
Yes, so this is actually an opportune question. We are going to go through a little bit of a rocky time for the next couple of years, I believe. As someone who's spent some time on the commission, I understand there are three things that we need to do. First of all, make sure that we are protecting essential services so that the city residents feel safe and healthy. Second, we need to protect our revenue. We need to protect sources of revenue so that we don't get into a spiral further down. And lastly, sort of make the cuts where necessary, where we can defer maintenance safely. Those are so there is a proper.
Thank you, Kolji. Jonathan.
I want to take advantage of the expertise that we have here in our city. I think that the current council has not paid enough attention to the Finance Commission. I think that there are a lot of good ideas. There are warnings coming from the Finance Commission, and that's the first place we have to start. When it comes to budgeting, first and foremost, there's no question that the City Council has to make sure that it is protecting public safety. And second, right behind that, we need to maintain and make sure that our public infrastructure is being taken care of, because those are huge liabilities down the road.
All right, Scott. You're muted, Scott. Scott, you're still muted. There we go.
City's lost over $15 million in its investment portfolio and is taking out a $14 million loan. We need quarterly reports done on time. We need simplified reporting. We need to reduce spending until we know it's safe to do so, to change, and we need to protect essential services.
Thank you, Scott. And Terry.
Protecting essential services, of course, is number one. Number two is protecting the ambiance of Los Altos. If we protect that, we will have the 3/4 of our revenue taken care of by property taxes. And thirdly, we need to look to the financial department to tell us which priorities are the most important moving forward.
Thank you, Alex.
So my plan is by increasing property values, and allowing for more development services, it would increase the tax revenue of the city and increase the budget, and also simplifying the redevelopment process, including subjectivity removal from some of the planning departments, stop unnecessary litigation, and nurture businesses to provide, once again, more tax revenue for more city services to funnel back into the community.
Thank you, Alex. And honestly, Lynette, I don't know why you keep coming up last all the time, because all I'm doing here is rolling the chips around. So, but you're up last again.
I was wondering how that worked. Thank you. So the maintenance of public safety, essential services, as everyone emphasized, such as law enforcement and fire protection, is very important. Emergency services, road repairs, and sewer maintenance are also our budget priorities. We all know that with COVID-19, we're going to get less money on sales tax, and hotel tax revenue. So we really have to.
Oh,
I don't think I answered that, Mike.
did I miss you?
I think so.
I may have. If you didn't answer it, I'm sorry. So I'm so fiddled up with the poker chips here. Go for it.
Okay, so first of all, we need to reduce, if not eliminated, spending on the lawsuits that we've mentioned a couple times in the discussion already. We also need to minimize borrowing that we need to complete the community center. And those go hand in hand, because if we're not spending on lawsuits, then we're also not going to have to borrow for the community center. I think we need increased transparency in the budget so we can really get a better sense where some of these expenses seem to be hiding. And let's regenerate our businesses so that the sales tax revenue starts.
All right, thank you, Sally. And Gil, I think you have the next question.
I do. All right. For many Los Altos residents, affordable housing is a controversial issue. What is your take on it, and how will you appease both sides?
And Terry, you'll take that one first.
Affordable housing is a big issue because land in Los Altos is scarce and expensive. We do have areas where we can put affordable housing, the downtown core and the El Camino corridor. We need to do everything we can to encourage the developers. We give them any kind of bonuses we can. We encourage them to do that, and hopefully that will help in the long term, not the short term.
Thank you, Terry. Koljeet.
Yes, so yes, affordable housing is important because we want people who live among us also to be the people who serve us. My daughter's a school teacher. I would love for her to be able to live here. I agree that structurally, this is not something that free market will allow because the land's so expensive. But I think it's a larger problem is just to get to the fact that we can all agree that your experience of Los Altos is not going to diminish because there's somebody in affordable housing living next door to you. I think if we get there, we can solve this.
Thank you, Koljeet. Jonathan.
So I believe that a city has an obligation the city has to comply with the law. I think that we have both a moral and a legal obligation to provide more affordable housing for all levels of the socioeconomic strata that we have in the city. If we're going to be a vibrant community, we need to have members of the community with with diversity and different backgrounds. It's important for the city to be transparent and honest about our obligations so that people understand why we're taking the positions we are.
All right, Alex.
So I would incentivize the construction of ADUs, giving the residents an opportunity to choose if they would like to increase their density of the housing. Also incentivizing developers to provide BMR units to meet arena goals by allowing higher density in those areas. And we would do this and get residential input on where to do these projects, not if to do them, because we'll need to make this happen.
Thank you. Scott?
Affordable housing is one of the key issues of our time. Silicon Valley is a benefit of its own success. Housing prices have gone way out of line. We need to consider all options, including the El Camino corridor and downtown. I think there are different requirements and different advantages to each. We need to apply for subsidies, work with the state, work with the federal government, and see if we can recover some subsidies that have been lost. Some cities have been able to do that. The arena requirements require about 50% affordable housing. The city doesn't build housing, but it needs to consider how to work.
All right, and Lynette? And Lynette, you're muted.
We need genuine affordable housing. We have been adding more luxury and small amounts of moderate rate units. We need to work to increase low and very low below market rate units, encourage more rental units. Below market rate units need to remain below market rate units in perpetuity. We need to seek grants to house individuals for such as those with special needs, for veterans and seniors.
All right, and Sally, I didn't forget you this time. You're up.
All right, I'm going to focus on some of the tactics. So ADUs are the low-hanging fruit. Every homeowner, once the new ordinance is passed, will be entitled to a detached and an attached interior ADU. That could potentially triple units on one property. Work collaboratively with developers so that they'll provide the 15% or more units below market rate, negotiate for more, and also adopt impact fees so the city can buy additional units.
Thank you, Sally. And our last question in this round, number 13, will be asked by Sophia.
How do you plan to maintain citywide health?
And Sally, you're going to go first this time.
You didn't even give me time to write the question down. All right, so I think the county has been doing a good job, and we've been following their guidances so that we don't have city doctors. The county does. So we need to work with them as we have been to follow the guidances. And of course, then the state also has their own ideas. We should encourage more mass downtown. We're doing pretty well, but let's all stay focused on keeping safe.
Lynette.
Well, we have done a lot of things to encourage citywide health. I've worked with Citywide to bring COVID testing to Los Altos. We've also provided funding, grant to CHAC, the Community Health Awareness Council, to provide services to the residents of Los Altos, and to provide monies to the Mountain View Community Services Agency, where they provide assistance to our residents and our seniors, and meals as well. So in supporting these agencies will ensure health to our community. And we will continue to work with the county because the county.
Thank you, Lynette. Alex?
So I would work with the county and with El Camino Hospital and defer to their guidelines and guidance for this, maintain and follow all COVID regulations. Whether or not residents believe in them, it would be a good idea to follow them. So maintain social distancing, not opening up before it's safe, following all of the regulations that are put in place so that we don't overwhelm our hospital system.
Thank you, Alex. Scott?
County directives are better than the expertise that we have. Let's follow them. Let's socially distance. Let's use masks as appropriate. We need to encourage people to do those things. We also want to keep testing available, and I believe it should be ongoing until we know otherwise. This pandemic may continue for an indefinite period of time. We also need to protect the elderly, especially in our city and in our retirement homes. So we need to watch over our retirement homes and protect them there.
Thank you, Scott. Terry?
Los Altos is a very fortunate community. We are law-abiding citizens, and we've all been following the rules of the county and the state very well. I think everybody's encouraging each other to wear masks, stay distance. Everybody always goes to the other side of the street. They don't get close to each other in stores. We're just very fortunate. And the thing I can say about it is I'm happy to be in Los Altos because of that. The old people do need help, though.
Thank you, Terry. Kuljit?
Yes, I would concur with the general sentiment here that the county actually has very good guidelines. We need to support those and make sure that those are implemented well. I would say that the one thing that the city can do perhaps is we have, for just the mental health of its citizens, we have parks. We can have better guidelines on how to use those parks so we can actually enjoy them and get some outing. I've been to San Francisco and they have very good guidelines on how to use their open spaces.
Thank you, Kuljit. And Jonathan?
I think the city has a real opportunity during the pandemic to make sure that it's providing the services that our older adults and differently abled citizens have. These are more at-risk communities, and they're not able to enjoy the same level of vibrancy that we're starting to enjoy now. Let's make sure that these communities have access to medicine, groceries, and are being socialized as well. I'd also like to see the city provide more services, maybe online services to the Parks and Rec Department, and make sure that once the pandemic is over, services are being offered to the southern part of the city.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. All right, now we're going to move into the lightning round. So each of you got a PDF of a yes and a no. And why don't we practice just sort of putting those up, because we'd like the audience to still be able to see your face. So yeah, Jonathan, you're getting a little, yeah, let's see. How many? Yeah, Jonathan, you're having trouble with your background there. Okay. And so are you, Scott. You've got a little bit of the background. So, all right, we'll do it as best we can. So here we go. Rapid round. Should we municipalize Wi-Fi? Yes or no? I've got, okay. Terry is a no, and I don't see an answer for Lynette. No, everyone else is yes. Okay.
But I would like to add that
there's no comment. There's no talking. All right, next question. Should housing take priority over preserving our green/recreational spaces? Yes or no? I only see one yes from Jonathan. I think everyone else is a no. All right, thank you. Next question. Do you think it's important to send students back into local schools as soon as possible? Yes or no? Let's see. Lynette, Jonathan, Alex, Sally, and Scott are no, and Kuljit and Terry are yes. All right. Next one. Is the Open Streets Initiative viable to keep throughout the year, though with obstacles of winter and weather? Yes or no? I'm seeing unanimous yes. Keep the streets open throughout the winter for the restaurants. And did you support Los Altos Measure C in 2018? Yes or no? I see yeses from Lynette and Scott. Everyone else says no. All right. So a little preamble to some other questions. And we've covered this a little bit. The city has recently incurred multi-million-dollar legal expenditures, including large judgments against the city for acting in bad faith. This is what I'm just reading it. How would you have voted, or did you vote, on whether to approve the 5-story building at 40 Main that complied with state law? Did you vote yes? Did you or would you have voted yes or no for 40 Main Street building? Okay, still coming up. I don't see one from Sally. So Lynette and Sally are no, they voted no or would have voted no, and everybody else voted yes. Thank you. How would you have voted, or did you vote, on whether or not to appeal the judge's ruling against the city in the 40 Main lawsuits? So would you or did you vote to appeal or not? The only yes vote is Lynette. Everybody else voted no. They would not have voted to appeal. Next one. How would you have voted on the lot subdivision at 831 Arroyo Road that conformed to our city code? Yes for the subdivision or no against it? Lynette and Scott voted or would have voted no. Everybody else would have voted yes. How would you have voted on the AT&T Mobility and Verizon Wireless 5G applications, which conform to federal FCC rules? Yes to approve the applications or no to deny the applications? I'm waiting for Lynette.
I want to make sure you're asking how I voted, just so I'm not.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
So Lynette, Alex, Scott, Kuljit, don't put yours down yet. Don't put them down. Terry, our no's, and Jonathan, Kuljit, and Sally are yeses. They would have voted to approve the application. How would you have voted, or did you vote, to accept a pocket park instead of $8 million plus in park and lieu fees for the 5150 El Camino project? Yes to accept the pocket park or no, not to accept it? The only no is Kuljit, who would have voted no, not to accept it. Everybody else voted yes to accept the pocket park. And the how would you have voted to settle with Greg Bunker by buying his Loyola Corner lot? Yes to buy the lot or no, not to buy the lot? Sally is the only no on that. Everyone else would have voted yes. All right, thank you for that. We will now move on to another round of 4 questions that will be answered by each candidate, 1 minute each. And Bruce, you have the question. And Bruce, you're muted, so.
Be sure and reduce his time.
Yeah.
Okay, how would you plan to effectively work with the city manager, and how would you measure your success in doing so?
Well, Lynette, you're now first.
Well, I have to work with the manager. We've got a lot done. We've acquired we've moved forward on a lot of developments that came forward. We also acquired 999 Fremont, and we also purchased, let's see, we also moved forward on a lot of agenda items such as the REACH codes, public safety, addressing the town hall for police. So we have accomplished a lot this year working with our city manager.
All right, Jonathan.
Thank you. I just want to clarify something from the last round. I may have misunderstood one of the questions. I would have voted against the 40 Main Street litigation at every single level.
Okay.
With respect to the city manager, the city council needs to meet with the city manager in closed session and really set forth the goals that the council has for the city manager, make sure that those goals are clear, and then find out ways that the city council can collaborate and work with the city manager to make sure that those goals are accomplished. And sometimes that means changing course throughout a year, but the city manager and the council have to work together. That's in the best interest of the city. I think that it is inappropriate for the city council to criticize city staff in public. I think that it is absolutely inappropriate for the city council to comment on personnel matters when it comes to city staff. Whether or not those goals are accomplished, you look at the end of the year, you find out what could have been done and how the city manager and council could have worked better together.
Thank you, Jonathan. Kuljit.
Yes, if I may comment on my yes, no vote on 5150, that $8 million was exactly banked into the community center. That's why we need a loan, because we decided not to get it. So the city manager, I feel, does not have the same sentiment that the council is working very well with them, that they've been effective. I feel the council has not been good about setting goals and objectives for the city manager and working with them to actually empower them to make good decisions and hire great staff and be behind them every step of the way. I think agree with Jonathan that the public opposition to city manager, etc., is not good practice. I think those conversations can happen in closed doors, but I feel that the council needs to think of city manager as someone who works with them and not against them. And that sentiment needs to change because the city manager is the one who actually runs the city.
Thank you. Alex?
So I would push for more community outreach prior to city council meetings so we can power through the agenda items with ample community input. The city manager is the CEO and we'd be the board of directors directing what we want done. And then it'd be up to the city manager to actually move forward with it. And we would have attainable goals and provide city staff with clear, so that city staff could provide us, if elected, with clear, concise input from experts and residents so that city council could do what city council is supposed to do, which is make decisions on behalf of all of the residents. So it would be a more collaborative effort and trying to make sure that we get the best information possible so we can make the best decision along with our own research and not overanalyze something to death, but work with the city manager to provide clear goals for what we are trying to do.
Thank you, Alex. Scott?
As long as we're clarifying my view of 40 Main Street, as originally I would have voted for a 3-story building, but not a 5-story building originally. But regarding the city manager, I think it's important that every council member builds a relationship with him. I would try to do that right from the get-go. I'd want to know him, know his goals, his priorities. I'd like to know his his feelings about the current council, what could be improved. I'd like to hear from him and have an open dialogue. I'd like to have periodic meetings, personal one-on-ones and reviews. How are we working? What could we do better as a council? I'd like to know the answers to those questions and treat him with respect, build a cooperative team between him and myself and other members of council, keep focused on city priorities, and ultimately do everything I can to make his job more effective and make him look good before the city and before council.
Thank you, Scott. Terry.
The residents are in charge of telling us what they want. And when we're in charge of helping the commissions and the manager get what needs to be done for the residents, it's a collaborative effort. We seem to be able to do that a lot of the time. I know that they do have personality differences, and that's just part of life. And people still need to make compromises for the best of all the residents. And with the resident input, we should be able to move through it. I found Chris Jordan to be a very informative person when we had our initiation, and the little bit that I know of him, I think he's a reasonable person, and I know everybody on the city staff is, because I've been working with them for 31 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. And I removed the chip too soon, but Sally, I think you're still up.
Right. You keep wanting to forget me, Mike.
Well, no, I'm just getting ahead of myself.
That's
And
okay. Okay, so
seconds.
I would work with our city manager professionally and with respect. That's how we should treat all of our city staff. I've been a little puzzled as to why we don't actually take what are professional human resource practices and work to support our staff to do the best jobs that they can, because that's what we need them to do. We want to work with the city manager to build in accountability so the staff understands what their goals are. If they understand what their goals are, they can achieve them. And then that means, again, we all achieve what we need for them to do. So again, training is important. So work with the city manager so we can identify where we need to fill some gaps, because the stronger our staff is, then the better off we're all going to be.
Great, thank you, Sally. All right, Stella, I think you have the next question.
All right. What do you think is the right balance between valuing individual constituent rights and desires versus making less popular, more visionary decisions to transform the city?
And Jonathan, you'll get the first crack at that one.
Boy, this is really one of the tensest dichotomies that we have in the city right now. I think that any analysis has to start off with what are the city's legal obligations. For the most part, Los Altos residents tend to be fairly conservative in what they want and the sort of change that they want to tolerate, or that they want to accept. But the reality is that change is happening all around us. And if you don't manage change, then change is going to manage you. The city council has an absolute obligation to listen to the residents, listen actively, make decisions based on data, but temper those decisions with empathy and compassion as well. If you're not following that process, then the council is not being transparent. And quite frankly, I don't think that it's being honest as well. So at the end of the day, council members are elected to use their best judgment, but that judgment has to be informed and has to take into account the desires of the residents.
Thank you, Jonathan. Terry.
The staff and the manager need to make sure that we know all the latest rules and laws that have been passed and that we are required to follow. If we know those, we can make sure that residents understand that the things that we have to do to follow the law is what we have to do. But we also will want the residents' input to keep the quality and the charm of whatever we do, because that protects the property values of Los Altos, and protecting the property values of Los Altos protects our budget and protects our whole financial aura of what we have in this wonderful town.
Thank you. And Lynette.
The city council is required to follow the law. It's important to know the laws as we conduct our business in public. So people may perceive that the process is inefficient, but we have to do so because we need the public's input to guide us. We also need good data to drive us. And so we make decisions at the end of that process. And we need to do so considering all input and all information given to us by our staff as well as the public. And doing so is proper good governance, and that's what's needed, good governance. Thank you.
Thank you. Kuljit.
Yes, quite a philosophical question, some level. So I think, I mean, the answer on a philosophical level is that all rights that do not impinge on anybody else's individual rights are to be honored and respected. And that's sort of a base requirement as a base operating principle I would use. But that's just at a starting point. I think as good citizens and as a part of a community, I think there's value in us actually holding back some of our desires for the benefit of the others. I think if we approach things with that level, that we are willing to actually step forward and help our neighbor and be responsible and be courteous, I think we'll end up with actually having an environment and rules and regulations that actually make us all feel better. In fact, you will feel better having curtailed some of your individual rights that you could actually enjoy as a basic right.
Great, thank you. Sally, you're right here.
Okay, so this is a question that faces not just Los Altos, but really our whole nation. I mean, there are some who argue their individual rights mean they don't have to wear masks. So really there's a concept of we are a community and what is the greater good? As a community, do we actually only adopt things that everyone says, yes, we all use? Or do we have a variety of services that some people use? Not everyone has children, but we have schools and libraries and playgrounds. Not everyone is of a senior age yet, but we have resources for our seniors. So for a healthy community, we actually have to make decisions that looks at the overall good, the greater good. And many people may not find some of those items useful, but we need to be forward looking and we need to take into account things like the environment and services that are useful overall for all of us.
Thank you, Sally. Scott?
I think there's some principles that are important here. The first is you want to do the best for the most people for all of the time. And so in doing that, you want to take into account public safety, and public safety should be a priority. All voices should be heard on any particular issue, that every issue should be looked at from all sides, that the homework should be done before coming to council. With that in mind, residents in the city have told me over and over again that they think that their voices are not being heard by council. I've heard that from the young, I've heard it from seniors, I've heard it from people in between. We need to do a better job of reaching out to residents to make sure we get their inputs and that they feel that they're part of the decision-making process. And finally, I would offer that the laws are ever changing and we need to keep staff trained and updated as we as council members would have to do because the laws are changing. It's a dynamic situation. We need to be adaptive and flexible.
Thank you, Scott. And Alex?
So we have to support the individual rights of the residents, but at the same time, we need to support what's in the greatest public interest of all of the residents. We need to meet progress goals for incremental change that are required to avoiding spending taxpayer money. And I would inform the residents of what is required and what requirements have been passed down and is the new law to avoid making a hasty decision that no one wants. So if there's a resident issue that's for the greater good and legal obligation, I would support some compensation to property owners for any lost value. My philosophy is that we need to increase the resident enjoyment of their property by supplying residents with all the services that they would desire. And so some of this would come with increased density and with that, I would incentivize developers to provide more parks, more parking, and other things to be able to increase resident enjoyment overall. So for the greater good, but still maintaining foresight of individuality.
All right. Well, I think we did it, folks, and to the audience. We actually had a few more questions, but I think we're going to honor the time commitments. We've been going 2 hours. That's a half an hour longer than the president and the vice president went last night. And you guys are still going strong, and you showed that local government really knows how to get things done. Most polls show that people have more faith in their local government, which is closest to the people, than they do in their state and federal governments. And I think by your demeanor this evening, you were able to do that. I want to thank everybody in the audience for being here, for participating tonight in our poll. We will be forwarding some of these questions onto the Los Altos Town Crier. And, you know, I want to just remind everybody what it says behind me, especially in Los Altos and in every city, but your vote matters. And, you know, we have seen elections in Los Altos go back and forth, you know, with, I think, a margin of 6 votes. So anybody who thinks my vote doesn't matter, it does. So get out and vote. You know, the ballots, I think, get mailed out this coming Monday, I think. So you will start seeing them soon. Again, I want to thank all of the candidates for being here. I'd like to thank our sponsors again, and I think we can share our sponsor list here just to see who our sponsors were. But again, thank you all for being here. Thank you all for your professionalism in answering the questions. And thank you to all of our interviewers for sticking through this tonight, asking great questions, and really helping foster democracy in our community. Thank you again, and good night, everybody. Stay safe and stay healthy.
And thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Mike, and thank you to the audience.
Well, did Chris Wallace, Mike.
Low bar.
Just so everybody knows, we have posted everybody's websites on the channel. Thank you all again.